There is a thing you've been avoiding, a diagnosis you don't want spoken out loud, a truth about yourself you keep at the very edge of your vision, a wound you would rather not look at directly, because you've decided that looking at it, really looking, would make it more real. So you glance away, you stay busy, you manage the pain instead of facing its source. But there is a story, 3,000 years old, where a dying people were told that their only cure was to do the exact thing they least wanted to do, not to look away from what was killing them, to turn and look straight at it. It is the strangest command God ever gave. On its surface, it seems to break God's own rules. And thousands of years later, Jesus pointed back to this bizarre little story and said, "That was a picture of me." You know the second of the 10 Commandments. Make no graven image, no idols, no statues, no crafted objects of worship. God had thundered it from a mountain. So hold that in your mind, and then watch what happens next. Because in this story, God tells Moses to craft an image, a metal statue, and not a statue of something holy, a statue of the very creature that was killing his people, a snake, the ancient symbol of the curse itself, going all the way back to a garden. And then God tells the dying to look at it and be healed. It sounds like magic. It sounds like the exact idolatry God had just forbidden. For centuries, people have stumbled over this passage and quietly moved past it. But it isn't a contradiction. It's one of the most profound pictures in the entire Bible. And to see why, you have to go out into the desert with a people who had run out of patience. The people of Israel are in the wilderness. They've been freed from Egypt, but freedom has turned into wandering, and the wandering has worn them down to the bone. And they break. They turn on God and on Moses, and the text records their words with brutal honesty. "Why did you bring us out here to die? There's no bread, there's no water, and this food, this manna from heaven, we loathe it. Sit with that." They are calling the bread of heaven worthless. It's not just complaint, it's contempt for the very thing keeping them alive. And then come the serpents. The text says fiery serpents moved through the camp, and they bit the people, and many died. Venom in the veins, burning. Panic spreading tent to tent as the desert itself seemed to turn against them, and the people, terrified, come running back to Moses with a confession. "We have sinned. We spoke against the Lord and against you." Beg him to take the snakes away. So Moses prays, and here is where God's answer becomes strange. God does not take the snakes away. Instead, he tells Moses to make one. "Craft a fiery serpent," he says, "and lift it up on a pole, and anyone who is bitten, when they look at it, they will live." So Moses forms a serpent out of bronze and raises it high on a pole in the middle of the camp. And the rule is almost absurdly simple. If a snake bites you, don't search for the antidote. Don't run. Just look. Turn your eyes to the bronze serpent lifted up and live. And they did. The bitten looked, and they lived. Now let's ground this, because the details are richer than you'd guess. Those fiery serpents. The Hebrew word carries the idea of burning, and anyone who has felt the venom of a desert viper knows why. It burns like fire under the skin. The wilderness they were crossing, the Arabah, was and is home to venomous snakes. This is not a fairy tale hazard. It's the real terror of that landscape. And the material matters too. The serpent was made of bronze, copper, And here's a detail most people miss. This region, the Arabah near Timnah, was one of the great copper mining zones of the ancient world. Making a copper serpent right there is not random. It's using the very metal the earth around them was famous for. And then there's this. Archaeologists digging at Timnah at an ancient desert shrine actually uncovered a small copper serpent, a snake figurine, from roughly the right era and the right region. Now, that is not Moses' serpent, but it tells you something powerful. A serpent lifted up in that desert was an image that made sense to those people. God spoke to them in a symbol their world already understood. There's even a play on words hiding in the Hebrew. The word for serpent and the word for bronze sound almost identical. The whole object is a kind of pun. A bronze that is a serpent that is bronze. And the symbol outlived them all. A snake wound around a lifted pole still stands to this very day as the mark of medicine and healing. You've seen it on ambulances and hospital doors your entire life without knowing it echoes a desert 3,000 years old. But the strangest chapter comes centuries later. The Israelites kept that bronze serpent, and over time they stopped seeing it as a memory of God's mercy and started worshiping the object itself. They burned incense to it. They gave it a name. Until a king named Hezekiah smashed it to pieces because the thing that once carried healing had become an idol. The cure had become the curse, which is its own warning, and we'll come back to it. So why would God heal them like this? Why a look? Because the cure was never in the bronze. The bronze had no power. The healing came from the humility of doing the one thing pride hates, turning to face the thing you'd been running from, and trusting instead of striving. And notice how simple it was. Too simple. There was no potion to brew, no penance to perform, no distance to earn back. Just look. And that simplicity is exactly what offends us. You would almost rather there be a hard task, a price to pay, something you could point to and say, I fixed this myself. But grace kept saying, stop working, just look up. Now hold that picture, something representing the curse lifted up high, and life for everyone who simply looks at it in trust. Because that is the exact image Jesus reached for to explain his own death. In one of the most famous conversations in the Gospels, he says, just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so the Son of Man must be lifted up, so that everyone who looks to him in faith will live. He is comparing himself on the cross to that bronze snake on the pole. The thing that carried the curse, lifted up, becomes the source of life for anyone who turns and looks. And the warning from Hezekiah still stands over your life today. It is fatally easy to start worshiping the symbol instead of the God behind it, to cling to the ritual, the object, the routine of faith, and quietly lose the one it was ever pointing to. The bronze serpent saved lives, and then it had to be destroyed because people fell in love with the cure and forgot the healer. So what is the thing you keep looking away from? And what would it mean for once to simply look up? There is a thing you've been avoiding, and every instinct tells you that healing means looking away from it, managing it, outrunning it. But the oldest, strangest cure in Scripture says the opposite. The bitten did not look away. They looked up at the very thing lifted high in front of them. And they lived. The cure was never complicated. It only ever asked you to lift your eyes.